welcome to Across the Roundtable. Glad you guys have joined us again for our study in the Gospel of Matthew. We're in part number 32, which tonight we'll be covering Matthew chapter 26, verses 17 through 35. This is the Passover / Lord's Supper. So without delay, guys, let's jump into this thing. Matthew 26:17, Cameron?
Now on the first day of the unleavened bread, the disciples came to Jesus, saying, "Where will you have us prepare for you to eat the Passover?"
Of course, the Feast of the Unleavened Bread is one of 7 feasts of the Lord and has a significant place within Judaism. This observance was also called Chag Hamazot. It lasts 7 days and follows the celebration of Passover, commemorating the swift departure of the Israelites from Egypt. We know that goes back in the Old Testament, of course. A key element of this feast is the consumption of the unleavened bread, symbolizing the haste with which the Israelites left Egypt. Moreover, the required removal of all leaven or yeast from the household represents the removal of sin and impurity from one's life. As 1 Corinthians 5:7 says this, Paul said,
"Cleanse out the old leaven, that you may be a new lump, as you really are unleavened. For Christ, our Passover lamb, has been sacrificed."
In time, leaven came to be symbolically to represent sin, right? Jesus would say, like, beware the leaven of the Pharisees. There has that symbolic value. Of course, he's borrowing an Old Testament concept that leaven itself is sin, because once it permeates the dough, you can't get it out. Like when sin permeates your life, it does corrupt and influence your life. But in its original intent, the reason why there's no leaven is because he said tonight when you have Passover, eat standing up, don't make bread that's going to rise. We don't have that kind of time. Eat this meal in haste because the death angel will pass over, and as soon as you get the go-ahead, you got to get out of here. So travel light. This is not a meal you sit down and take your time with. You eat this in haste. Well, the Jews around the world still practice the Feast of Unleavened Bread and Passover today. So let's see how the modern Jews today celebrate the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So Jewish and Messianic Christians who keep the festival will go through their homes on the day prior to Passover and clean out all the yeast in their homes. They wash out the cupboards, brush out the breadcrumbs, and check every nook and cranny to see if any yeast is left. All leaven is removed from the home. This is turned into a game for the children to participate in. It often involves using a candle to search and a feather to brush the yeast into a paper bag. Some will hide 10 slices of bread through the house for children to find. At the end of the search, the bag is burned or buried. It's kind of like our Easter egg hunt, right?
So you can't eat the bread?
No, you can't eat it.
But it's not, okay.
You gotta
it's not the day yet?
Right. So the day before, I guess it's, I guess
I'm just playing around.
But we did the same thing with our Easter, right? We're searching for eggs. It doesn't have anything to do with the original Easter, obviously. And this is just a game that kids play. It does symbolize the initial Passover and the escape from Egypt. It does commemorate that event. But it's a neat, fun way to teach kids history, right? So some Jews will take the ordinary utensils and either destroy them, things that have touched yeast previously, or sell them to a Gentile for a week. At the end of the week, they buy them back. They also have a set of kosher utensils that are used just for the feast. So you find your Gentile neighbor doesn't observe Passover, and you say, "I'm going to sell all my silver in the house that's touched yeast in the past year to you for $1. And then when this Passover is over for a week, I'll come back and buy it from you for $1. That's a bit absurd, isn't it? But that's how you keep your silverware and you keep the customs of the Passover. This is all man-made, right? This is clearly a set of rules that have been imposed on the religion. It's developed over time. Once the search is over, a special blessing is said to declare that all known yeast has been eradicated, and thereby any existing yeast that is found later is no longer valid. In Monopoly, this is called a get out of jail free card, right? You pray that bless the house. Now, somebody finds a piece of bread later on in the house, it doesn't count, more or less.
Can you eat that bread?
I don't know.
I'm just curious. I'm just curious about the rules at this point.
I think you're not supposed to eat anything with it.
Yeah, but if it's, I'm just wondering about how far the get out of jail free card goes in this context.
So we have like saltine crackers, Ritz crackers, unleavened bread in that form would be fine for this week. But it's just to commemorate this event. All right. So we're going to move into the Passover celebration here. Jesus.
He said, "Go into the city to a certain man and say to him, 'The teacher says, my time is at hand. I will keep the Passover at your house with my disciples. And the disciples did as Jesus had directed them, and they prepared the Passover.
So what is commonly known as the Lord's Supper was a Passover Seder, right? It's that biblically prescribed meal with which Passover begins. This is the beginning of the Passover holiday. The Messiah and his 12 Jewish disciples were celebrating, this is a neat context, the Passover meal, reflecting and remembering the miracle of the lamb's blood placed on the doorposts of their forefathers' homes, which caused the angel of death to see the blood, spare the lives, and deliver them from the Egyptian bondage. Seder participants recall the slavery that reigned during the first half of the night by eating matzo, which is a poor person's bread, and maror, which is bitter herbs, which symbolize the bitterness of slavery, and karaset, which is a sweet paste representing the mortar which the Jewish slaves used to cement bricks. All these elements of the Passover meal have symbolic value, right? So let's get back into the text here.
When it was evening, he reclined at the table with the 12.
So now we've gotten the animal. We went into town and we went into town. We found where this house is going to be to celebrate the Passover. Now, many scholars think that it was John Mark's house, that it was in John Mark's, because he came from a wealthy family, right? It's in his house where we have that Passover meal. Now we're upstairs. It's evening time, the time for the Passover meal. They're reclining at the table. So recall at the freedom of the second half of the night, they eat the matzah, which is that poor person's bread, the unleavened bread. They drank the 4 cups of wine in reclining position, and they dipped vegetables into salt water. The dipping began a sign of royalty and freedom. So let's look at the Seder meal, the Passover meal. If you see on the screen, there's all the elements of the Passover meal. You have the lamb. Remember he said in the original Passover lamb, God told Moses to tell all the Israelites this: kill a lamb, take that lamb's blood, sprinkle with the doorpost of your house, prepare it very quickly. If you don't have a lamb, go to the neighbor's house and share the lamb with them. Make sure there's no waste here. And these are these are elements of that meal. You have cherizet, which is kind of a leafy vegetable. You have a karpas, which is almost like a garnish kind of vegetable. Then you have the moror, which we talked about a moment ago, those bitter herbs. You have the karaset, which is the sweet, like symbolize the paste which they used to make bricks to build things there in Egypt. Okay, let's look at each of these elements of the Passover meal and see what they symbolically represent as we go through this. And then we're going to see how Christ will take that meal and then transform it to something with greater value. All right? So you want to take these, Richard, best you can, and we'll kind of discuss these.
Yeah, sure. The first is Kaddish, recital of Kiddush blessing and drinking of the first cup of wine.
As we go through, there'll be 4 cups of wine. This begins the Passover meal. There's a blessing. And then you drink that first cup of wine. Right.
Second is Urshatz, the washing of the hands.
And that wasn't just to get rid of germs, of course it does, but it's also a ceremonial washing, right? It's a purity kind of a thing.
The third is Karpaz, dipping of the Karpaz in salt water.
You can see the matzo, the unleavened bread on the table. This is just go to Google and you can find these images.
We actually did a Seder meal in my homeschool co-op when I was a kid, and dipping the Karpaz in the water stood out to me as a child as a very what are we doing moment in this meal. We're just dipping grass in water and we're supposed to eat this. I would never eat this,
Yes.
So yeah, it stood out to me. Yeah.
Yeah, this is not a meal. This is not a grand big meal, right? Where you're enjoying this. You eat it as a haste. Eat it standing up, in fact.
Right.
You should be eating this with a sense of urgency.
Matzah, unleavened bread there. You had that? Oh, did you go back?
So the
Okay.
4th stage.
Oh, yeah, 4. Yeshatz, breaking the middle matzah. The larger piece becomes the afikoman.
These are all obviously Hebrew terms, of course. So after you've dipped the karpas, whatever that is, like celery, kind of not celery, but it's more of a garnish kind of into the water, and eating that. Then you have your second piece of bread.
That's the Yeshatz, right. And then Magid, retelling of the Passover story, including the recital of the 4 questions and the drinking of the second cup of wine.
So this is the heritage, right? This is why we do this thing. It's not that different than Christians who might have a tradition at Christmas time. We have a meal at your house, you might read the Nativity, and just kind of say, this is why we celebrate Christmas. So I think these festivals are try to, especially in a culture that was primarily oral, like preserved information orally, these sort of things help preserve these stories, don't they?
Yeah.
And a Jewish person's heritage is tied to the Exodus story, isn't it? Because they went into Egypt as a family of nomadic shepherds, and they came out a nation of 1 million people. In 400 years, they transferred from a group of nomadic herders to a nation of people. That's amazing, isn't it? Right. And then there's the second step there, or sixth step. I'm sorry.
Raksha. Second washing of the hands.
All right. Sounds like you sneezed there for a second.
Yeah, achoo. Yeah.
And then you see the images there, so we're going to continue on through this.
Motzi, number 7. Who brings out, is the quote there, blessing over the bread.
Motzi means he who brings out. It's the blessing now over the bread. Multiple blessings, multiple prayers. We tell them the story as you go through this.
8, matzah, blessing before eating matzah. 9, maror, eating of the maror.
That's that bitter herbs, which reminds them that in Egypt they ate bitter herbs. It was a struggle. It wasn't a place they wanted to live because it was hard labor.
There's then korish, eating of a sandwich made of matzo and maror.
Which sounds like it'd be very untasty, but who knows?
Yeah, it's kind of like a little cracker sandwich. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. And then 11, shulchan, or ish, set table, the serving of the holiday meal. Forgive me if I'm butchering these and somebody knows better. Safun, or hidden, the eating of the afikomen, or the dessert. And then 13, the barish, blessing after the meal, drinking of the third cup of wine. 14, hello.
In Western culture, we normally bless the meal before we eat. It's very common for Jews to bless the meal after they eat. It's like, if I give you something, you say thank you. You don't say thank you for that money and I can have the money. You thank God after it's been received. It's a common sort of practice. Obviously, you can do the order you want to. And in this Passover, you're blessing before the meal, during the meal, and after the meal. You're always praying as you go through this.
Number 14 is Hallel, or praise, the recital of the Hallel, which is Psalm 113 through 118, traditionally recited at festivals, and of course the drinking of the fourth cup of wine. And then finally, Nurtza, say, next year in Jerusalem.
So when Jews celebrate this Passover meal, no matter where they are on the earth, they can say this year in New York City, next year in Jerusalem. When they first celebrated, say this year in Egypt, next year we'll be home.
Yeah.
So it points them toward a future homecoming. Now, what is so cool about this, in the Lord's Supper, what does Jesus say about this, about our Passover meal, our Lord's Supper? Right?
In remembrance of me?
Yes, do this in remembrance of me. He says, I want to eat of this again until I'm with you in the future in heaven. It's a point, there's 3 dimensions of time in the Lord's Supper. There's the past, what Christ did for us on the cross. The present, we remember him now. And there's a future event in the Lord's Supper, which is that we will be with him in heaven at the wedding supper of the Lamb. So it's that this year on earth, next year in heaven. Right? This Passover Lamb does that for us.
Christ is the same today, yesterday, and forever.
Absolutely. That's what Hebrews says. When we see the Passover meal, our minds as Christians should go to Christ and the cross. He is our Passover lamb, right? It was his blood sprinkled on the doorpost of our heart that caused the death angel to pass over us, right? The penalty of the curse of Adam, which hangs over us, is suspended, or it's passed over, right? As God the Father sees Christ's blood covering us, right? We escape the penalty of the wrath of God because of that. So we see that. That's what this is all foreshadowing, which we'll see here in a moment. So the 4 cups of Passover are 4 glasses of wine consumed in the traditional Seder meal. They correspond to the 4 biblical promises of redemption, which is sanctification, I'll bring you out; deliverance, I will rescue you; redemption, I'll redeem you; and praise, I will take you as my people. Each glass represents each of those promises God made to the Egyptians. The Israelites, while they were in Egypt, excuse me.
Yeah.
Richard, take that one.
Yeah, sure. The roasted lamb shank bone. One of the most striking symbols of the Passover is the roasted lamb shank bone called zeroah, which commemorates the Paschal, or the lamb sacrifice, made the night of the ancient Hebrews fled Egypt. Some people say it symbolizes the outstretched arm of God. The Hebrew word Zorah can also mean arm.
That's something that probably came on years after.
That's right. I think it means something else. The lamb at the meal.
Yeah, right. Maror, a bitter herb. Any bitter herb will work, though. Horseradish is the most common. Bitter herbs bring tears to the eyes and recall the bitterness of slavery. The Seder refers to slavery in Egypt, but people are called to look to their own bitter enslavements, whether addiction or habit. Charoset, that sweet salad of apples, nuts, wine, and cinnamon, represents the mortar used by the Hebrew slaves to make bricks. You want me to keep doing these?
Yeah, you're doing great,
sure.
man. You're very good.
Carpus is a green vegetable, usually parsley. Though any green will do, while carpus may symbolize freshness of spring, others say people eat it to make them feel like nobility or aristocracy.
That's right.
Yeah.
So Passover is tied to the equinox, right?
Mhm.
Passover is always celebrated on the first full moon following spring equinox. That's why it might bounce around our calendars. It might be March one year. It might be April the next year. Passover. Of course, Easter always follows Passover. Easter is always Friday of Passover week, right? So it has to be a springtime event, right? And that's why you have spring greens being eaten there. And Christ is our Passover lamb.
What if it falls on a Sabbath?
But Passover fall. It has to be the first. But it has to be the first Friday following the first full moon. So it can't. If it falls on a Friday, always it can never fall on a Sabbath. It's the first Friday before the first Sabbath, after the first full moon, after the spring equinox.
Not confusing.
Not at all.
Although I've always wondered that. Like, why does Easter always bounce around? I never took the time to look it up, though. Cheseret, or Kazeret, is the second bitter herb, often romaine lettuce, but people also use other leafy greens, or the leafy greens, rather, of horseradish or carrot plant. The symbolism is the same, of course, as the maror.
So it reminds them of their bitterness in Egypt. Slavery is a harsh thing. What's amazing about that is there's a point which they get in the wilderness and they say, "Oh, I'd like to go back to Egypt. At least we had food there. You brought us here to starve, Moses." And of course, Moses calls down bread from heaven. "Oh, we're tired of the bread. We just had something else." Then Moses calls down quails from heaven, right? They keep complaining and they look back to Egypt fondly in their disobedience. Moses is trying to say, there's something better for you guys ahead. Don't look back to the... Egypt represents sin and disobedience and bondage, doesn't it? And the promised land represents symbolically of a place of rest. And in their disobedience, they keep looking backwards to Egypt. When Moses would say, there's something better. Don't complain about what we have now and look fondly to the past. Look to the future. There's a message for us Christians in that as well, I believe. So Wednesday, of course, ends this 6 p.m. Thursday night begins. This meal takes place on what we call our Thursday evening, right? Okay. So think about this. Jesus now is going to transition from Passover meal to Lord's Supper. He retains the bread and the wine for the Lord's Supper. But what is the third element that's missing from? So what is the third element that's retained in the Lord's Supper from the Passover meal? So he doesn't keep them. He doesn't keep the bitter herbs. He doesn't keep the sweet caroset. He doesn't keep the karpas. He just takes the bread and the wine from the table. But I would argue there's a third element that's present in the Lord's Supper. He uses.
Is it God's presence with His chosen people?
Yeah, it's the lamb. That's the part which he retains, which I don't think we eat physically, of course, but the lamb who's with us is the third element of the Lord's Supper, which is a present reminder, right? In fact, this is from John chapter 6, if you guys want to read this.
Sure. Truly, truly, I say to you that whoever believes has eternal life. I am the bread of life. Your fathers ate the manna in the wilderness, and they died. This is the bread that comes down from heaven, so that one may eat of it and not die. I am the living bread that came down from heaven. If anyone eats of this bread, he will live forever. And the bread that I give for the life of the world is my flesh.
Good job. Now, I don't want to spend unnecessary amount of time because we went back to John chapter 6. I don't think John 6 is necessarily a Passover or Lord's Supper reference. I think this is a reference to the man in the wilderness. Roman Catholics will take John 6, for example, and say, you're eating Christ, you're eating his body. You're right. This is Christ foreshadowing the Lord's Supper. I think this is a more direct reference to the wilderness wandering of the manna. But what I do want to point our attention to here is the elements of the table point us to Christ. The bread becomes his body broken. The wine becomes his blood spilled. The lamb is, of course, Christ in total given for us on the cross. So that's when we have the Lord's Supper, as Christ says himself, do this in remembrance of me. It's a living memorial service. It's a reminder service we do weekly, annually, bi-monthly, that reminds us of what makes us Christians, right? That Christ himself is the Lamb. So I did want to bring this verse because Christ is the bread, but this is not a pure Passover text. This is a John 6 passage.
It does kind of, I think, have a connection to the Lord's Supper, though, because Christ is spiritually our nourishment, and the sacrament of the Lord's Supper, as he's communicated to us by grace, and we feast on him through our faith, and we're connected to him in that way. And then here he's saying that he's the bread that feeds us through our faith here as well.
But this is not a proof text for transubstantiation.
No.
Catholics will use that and say, look,
but it has a spiritual connection, I think.
I agree. He does sustain us. He is portrayed as the bread, as he says at the table. But I don't think that we eat Christ at the table.
In faith, we spiritually feast upon Christ.
There you go.
Well, we know that God is present through the sacraments. He's present through what he ordains to be present in, as we see in the Old Testament and the New Testament. And so we know that Christ kind of calls himself the spiritual bread here.
He's also, because he's God, omnipresent. And he also promised that where 2 or 3 are gathered in his name, he's there. So anytime we have church, whether the Lord's Supper or not, he's already present. And whether or not we're in the church building, he's already there because he's omnipresent. So the Lord's Supper does not make Christ present or more or less present than he already is.
I would say that with Paul's reasoning in, 1 Corinthians is it 8 or 9 or something like that, whenever he says this is not a normal meal, prepare yourself in a different way to take this meal. Don't just eat it like every day. God's communicating some kind of particular blessing through the institution of the Lord's Supper to the believer, through the faith. That's
throw a question out for you guys, food for thought here. And I agree with what you're saying, generally speaking. What 2 types of people are disqualified from the meal, from the Lord's Supper?
Those who aren't repentant.
Unbelievers.
Yeah.
So withhold the table from them. And then there's a second type of person that's disqualified. It's also in 1 Corinthians. It's you disqualify yourself when you take an unworthy manner. If you have unconfessed sin, or if something about you, don't do it, right? Jesus would say in the Gospels, not but Lord's Supper in particular, but he said when you have a sacrifice to the altar, put it down, go reconcile with your brother, and then come back to offer the sacrifice. Don't do any kind of religious duty if you have hatred in your heart, unconfessed sin, something.
Or if you're just hungry and you want to eat.
Right, as exploited in the Corinthian church, for sure they got there and drank and ate, didn't they? So obviously it's not for unbelievers, and it's not for the Christians who are in a state of unrepentance and have unconfessed sin. So when you do the Lord's Supper, you ought to be, at that point, ready to take it. Not that you're perfect, not that you haven't sinned that week, but just you've done some self-examination, and you say, I'm going to take this, right, in a worthy manner. All right, back to the text.
When it was evening, he reclined at the table with the 12. And as they were eating, he said, Truly I say to you, one of you will betray me. And they were very sorrowful, and began to say to him one after another, Is it I, Lord?
Now I want you guys to see this. They don't say, is it him? Is it Thomas? Is it Andrew? They're saying, is it I? Is it me? Jesus? Am I going to be the one that betrays you? They so don't know it's Judas that they suspect themselves before they suspect he's the one. That blows my mind, doesn't it? If Judas had given any kind of indication he was a bad character, they'd have said, it's Judas, right? It's him, right?
I think it just shows that they're entirely dependent on God's grace to not allow them to betray Jesus. Like, is it me? Am I going to betray him? I don't even know. I don't even have control over whether or not I will betray him.
But did they recognize that?
It's hard to say, but I think what is interesting is that they don't even suspect that it's Judas. Right? They would rather, they first suspect themselves before they suspect somebody else.
Yeah, there was no indication that he was that cunning.
In fact, he kept the money bag. He must have had the trust of Jesus because he keeps the money. You know what I mean?
Either that or Jesus just knew he was going to betray him, so he gave him that spot.
It could be.
Beforehand. He knew you're going to betray me, so you're going to be the guy who has the money, because that's what the person who betrays me would have, is the money.
Makes sense. We were talking about why Judas, what nobody said Judas, and I said he had the money bag. Maybe they trusted him, right?
Right.
I mean,
Outward
he
appearances.
needed to have the money to betray Jesus. So Jesus gave him the money in order that he would betray him. Like, Jesus knows he's going to betray him in the future, so...
He's a very carnal person, right? He's like a prosperity preacher. He's like out for cash, quick buck. Out for quick cash or make a buck off Jesus in the end.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder when Jesus knew.
From the very beginning.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Or does it say that?
Well,
I mean, he could have known all along. Obviously,
Yeah.
he could have known before he came or whatever. But he
I
was
think
limited in many ways to the knowledge that God granted him to know at that moment in time.
I think he tells us in John 17 when he prays the priestly prayer to God. If you want to read those verses, you're welcome to do so. You've read it before. In John
Right.
17, he prays for the disciples.
Except the one that,
Yes,
the son of perdition.
He was chosen from the very beginning.
Right.
You can read that text when you find it if you're looking for that.
That doesn't matter. It doesn't matter either way. It doesn't change the
I'm trying to think
interpretation of the
temporally
text.
when
But
he knows that, I think he tips his hand there.
Jesus refers to Judas Iscariot as the son of destruction.
mm-hmm. But of course,
I
that's
think-
after the fact, though.
Yeah, but the high priestly prayer, I think, is a Gethsemane prayer. I think that's a parallel to that account. But he indicates here in the John 17 that he was wicked from the beginning, and I
Right.
chose him for this purpose.
Well, yeah.
Look in John 17 and to kind of proof text that if you can. I think that's how it's said. I don't want to misquote Jesus or to somehow make it seem like Christ doesn't. I mean,
And we know that Christ was chosen to be crucified from the very beginning.
yes. Jesus. That's the only place in the Bible where Jesus prays for us, for Cameron and Richard and Jared, is in John 17. And he prays for the disciples, promising not to have lost any except for the one. And that was Judas Iscariot, of course. So I think Jesus knows when he chose Judas that his end was destruction. He was chosen for the means of the betrayal.
So it says, while I was with them, I was keeping them in your name, which you have given me, and I guarded them, and not one of them perished, but the son of perdition, so that the scripture would be fulfilled.
Yeah, so it's a prophetic reference to Judas.
Mm-hmm.
So he clearly has that idea in mind when he's praying to God. We get a chance to eavesdrop in his prayer life there.
Yeah.
But we'll continue on here. Verse 23.
He answered, "He who has dipped his hand in the dish with me will betray me. The Son of Man goes as it is written of him, but woe to that man by whom the Son of Man is betrayed. It would have been better for that man if he had not been born."
So clearly at this moment of time, Jesus knows at the table Judas is going to be the arbitrator. He has enough foresight to know he's going to actually dip his bread into the sop after I do. So not only does he know ahead of time, he knows ahead of time that Judas is going to do this very act at the table.
And despite Jesus knowing that this is going to happen, meaning that it is going to happen,
Yeah. It's foreknowledge, right?
right, it's also more condemnation upon Judas, who has yet another warning that it would be better had you not been born that if you go through with this.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Sure. Now, I think when you read the other Gospels, Luke and John, they go around the room discussing who's it going to be, who's it going to be. And I think it's young John, so it must be the Gospel of John, who leans back on Jesus' breast, because that's where he's sitting at the table. And Jesus kind of whispers in his ear, it's the guy that does this next. I think it's more of a conversation between just them two. Well, I think when you read John's Gospel, I think it's more of an intimate kind of whispering this. I have to look at that.
He's obviously fairly close, though.
Yeah.
Judas isn't far away if he's dipping the, what was it, into the salt water?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's bread. it is,
Koresh,
or something.
yeah.
Or maybe it is that.
Yeah.
It does say bread.
That doesn't say, yeah.
It may have said bread.
Might have got off because of
Dipped his hand in
the
the dish.
Seder.
The hand
yeah.
of the dish, so
yeah.
it would be that, the carpus into the
Yeah.
salt water. Look in John 18 and see if he's saying that to John, Jesus saying that to John specifically, or if he's saying it to the whole room. I think he's just whispering in John's ear. Because Peter seems to motion to John, ask him who it is. We want to know this. And then I think it's a more private conversation between Jesus and John at that table. It's just one of those things that'll bug me if I don't know it right now. And I hate to talk like I know the answer.
Mm-hmm.
It's in John 18.
I'm not finding it. It's,
Or they're having the meal. It's not there.
18 is Jesus arrested.
I'm sorry. So there is no Lord's Supper in the Gospel of John. I apologize for that. So it's got to be Matt. It's got to be in Luke
22.
21, 22.
22.
Yeah, there's no Lord's Supper in the Gospel of John. I don't think. Are you looking that up, Cameron?
Yeah.
Look at that verse in particular. It's a mad dash to that verse. It says he leans into his breast and he says that. But I could be wrong. This is a lot of dead air here. I was looking this up here, so I
Yeah.
apologize.
It's all right.
Okay, Cameron, read the next. Well, I'll read the next verse. 25. Judas, who would betray him, answered, "Is it I, Rabbi?" Now, he asked the same question all the other disciples asked. Is it I? Is it I? Is it I? Is it I, teacher? And Jesus says to him, "You have said so." So Jesus answers, of course he knows, yes, it's you. So you guys haven't to find that. It was Luke 22, verse
Okay.
19, 18, 19. 22, 8, Luke 22, 18.
22:18. For I say to you, I will not drink of the fruit of the vine from now until the.
Okay, so that begins the Lord's Supper. So been just before that. Is it I? Is it me? Who did this?
I don't know why I can't find it.
That's all right.
Yeah.
So we'll go back. We'll read Luke 22, 19 through 21. We'll find that later on. Here's the text.
He took the bread, and when he had given thanks, he broke it and gave it to them, saying, "This is my body, which you have given, which is given for you. Do this in remembrance of me." And likewise, the cup after they had eaten, saying, "This is the cup poured out for you. It is the new covenant in my blood. But behold, the hand of him who betrays me is with me on the table."
I want you guys to see what Luke is saying, because Matthew, it's a little vague. Luke gives us a detail that Matthew does not. Judas was present during the Lord's Supper. What we just saw in those two verses, the Lord's Supper, right? This is the body broken for you. This is the wine shed for you. The betrayer's hand is near the table. Do the remembrance of me. Judas is right here present. Can unbelievers in the church take the Lord's Supper? Well, they can. They shouldn't, right? They do that for Sunday, I'm sure. But it's not recommended, right? This is a descriptive text of an unbeliever at the table taking the supper. Not a prescribed text of what we should be doing, right? Clearly.
Now, as they were eating, Jesus took bread, and after blessing it, broke it, and gave it to the disciples, and said, "Take, eat, this is my body." And he took a cup, and when he had given thanks, he gave it to them, saying, "Drink of it, all of you, for this is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins. I tell you, I will not drink again of this fruit of the vine until that day when I drink it new with you in my Father's kingdom."
This year in Jerusalem, next year in heaven.
Yeah.
Right? Which is really cool when you look at the Seder meal. This year in Albuquerque, New Mexico, next year in Jerusalem. Well, they're eating it in Jerusalem, right? But this is not the ultimate end game for the Christian.
Mm-hmm.
It is this year, now, here, next time in the Father's kingdom in heaven, which I think is awesome. He takes the Lord's Supper, he turns it on his head, doesn't he?
Yeah.
He redefines the elements of the table to make it about him. Because all the Bible is about Christ. If you have read the Bible, if you read the Bible and didn't read it redemptively, you've read it wrong. Right? You've wasted your time reading the Bible if you don't read it redemptively. If you don't see Christ in the story of the Bible, you've misread the Bible. Because it's all about him. Even this Passover meal. Well, we'll continue
Pick
on.
up the Jesus Storybook Bible.
Yeah,
It's a good one. It'll help you out with that.
At this most important at this most important moment of history, he's changing Passover. I'm sorry. Would you read that for me? I'm kind of
Yeah,
inside.
at this most important history-changing Passover, Jesus was making known to his disciples then and to future generations of Jews and Gentiles in all nations, that he is the sacrificial lamb whose blood covers sin in all repentant hearts, sparing them from eternal death.
Very good. I'm going to angle so I got a lot of glare there.
Yeah.
Christ transforms Passover to the Lord's Supper. He takes this, which is a sacramental meal, and he infuses a deeper meaning. You thought this was about a lamb in Egypt, which spared you from the bondage of the Egyptians. I'm the lamb. It was my blood. It was my body. I'm the deliverer, which is what Messiah means, a deliverer. I'm the true deliverer here. Like Moses was a type and shadow of Messiah, I'm the actual Messiah. Now, I would think for Christians, Gentile Christians in particular, we don't have to celebrate the Passover. That's not our history. It's not our heritage. That was old covenant, old people. Our Passover meal is the Lord's Supper. This is our true deliverance.
Right.
And Jews can celebrate this today if they want to. If they become Christians, they need to, at the Passover meal, have the Lord's Supper in addition to it. Because he said this is the real meaning of the meal. So let's move on here. Jesus foretells Peter's denial. Matthew 26 and following.
And when they had sung a hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives. Then Jesus said to them, You will all fall away because of me this night. For it is written, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered. But after I am raised up, I will go before you to Galilee.
There is no, is it I, is it I, is it I. He said, you're all going to leave me. There's no ambiguity here. You're all going to be equally offended by me before the night is out. So now they've heard it's not just somebody at the table, it's all of us at the table are going to be guilty of this.
Peter answered him, Though they all fall away because of you, I will never fall away. Jesus said to him, Truly I tell you, this very night, before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times.
So Peter was never at a loss for words and always impetuous to speak up and out of turn. I think he truly means this. I am not going to leave you, Jesus. I think at this moment of time, if they'd stormed in the room and knocked the doors down, Peter would have drawn the sword and taken them all on. I think he means this. But give him 4 hours in drowsiness, he's going to kind of have a change of heart. What are your thoughts there?
Peter's very much reflects my own heart. Yeah, it's like, nope. You know what I mean? It's like, it's literally Jesus. You're like,
Not going to happen.
not going to happen.
Yeah, I always said I could be a martyr if they killed me quickly.
Yeah.
But if they're going to torture me or torture my kids, I don't know that I can hold up.
Yeah, right.
I want to think that I can, and Peter thinks that he can, but we're going to see he's going to fall.
Yeah.
Peter had been better to be quiet
Yeah.
than for us to remember historically Peter's big fall. He's going to make a fumble here. Jesus says, Peter, 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 you know what I'm talking about. Tonight before the rooster crows and the sun comes up, you're going to deny me 3 times. Deny you ever knew me. Don't talk like you're going to be a martyr tonight. You're going to be a martyr tonight. Of course, Peter will be a martyr eventually, but tonight's not the night. Tonight's you're going to be a coward like the rest of them. Jesus knows us so well, doesn't he? And he loves us just the same.
More so. Somehow.
Peter still said no.
He needs to love us more because we're less lovable.
That's right.
Peter said to him, Even if I must die with you, I will not deny you. And all the disciples said the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right, Peter. We agree with you. We're not going to deny.
I think they're probably still envisioning the same Messiah that they had envisioned before. Like, well, no, we'll all draw our swords, and we'll take on the Roman army right here in this garden.
Yep.
And there will be no raising of this city. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, they're disagreeing, of course, what Jesus says.
Yeah.
And they're in unison. Judas is not here. Judas has already
Yeah.
escaped from the room. He's already gone across town to find the chief priest and the temple guards. He'll be back in a moment or two. But at this time of the night, it's the 11 that's in the room.
Jesus knew the disciples would fall away, even though they promised they would not fall away from him.
That's right. And that's my commentary, not the text, but that's
Yeah.
right.
They didn't fall away from the faith, though.
Right.
They were secure there. They fell away like they denied him physically.
Yes, like we all do. We all deny Christ. We all stumble and fall.
Yeah.
And we're fallen creatures, and we fall
They
still.
didn't yet have the Holy Spirit.
That's true.
Yeah.
All right, guys, so devotional takeaway. So there's 5 things we'll look at. We close out tonight. How about that? We'll take the first one.
Jesus is the Passover lamb.
That's right.
Even some of those in the church are unredeemed.
Visible church. Make
Mhm,
sure
of course,
you know
yeah.
that. At the table that night, there was at least one unbeliever at the table. His name was Judas Iscariot. Number 3, Jesus, the broken bread, is the broken bread of the Lord's Supper.
Jesus is the blood of the Lord's Supper.
Number 5,
We all fall away at times.
and we've all betrayed Christ for far less than 30 pieces of silver. I want to make aware of that as well. Any thoughts? It's kind of short tonight, but we'll try to do another before we get out of here, obviously. Any thoughts? Nope.
Nothing standing out tonight? Yep. Absolutely. Father God, we thank you so much for this word. We thank you so much for the fact that you have given it to us. God, we just ask for wisdom as we continue to look into Matthew, as we strive to understand your word for us, how you would have us to grow because of it, and how you would have us to be different because of that word, God. We ask that you give us wisdom to that end, that you help us to be good witnesses for you to a lost and dying world. And all these things we pray in Jesus'